Hola.
Hola,
Welcome to Las
hola.
Weavers. You want to start with the date or?
Sí, for sure. Buenas tardes. Today is, and I want to say it out loud, July 31st, 2023. Why? Because we said una al mes. And you know what? We made it.
Al fin del mes, but here we are.
So here we are.
And we know that we both have full lives. And I also got sick when we were supposed to record. Obviously unplanned. But aquí
Claro,
estamos.
claro.
We made it. And today, our episode 2 is A lo que te truje Chencha. What does that mean to you?
Oh my God. Thank you for letting me start, girl, because I'll never forget. Esta mujer, Doctora Sandra, is the biggest blessing in my life. And I hope that when we do this plática for you all, that we are, like we said in this podcast, we are weaving together for the community, for the collective. So cuando uno de estos días, ni me acuerdo, we were talking about ni sé qué, pero nos encanta el witty witty. Y a mí esta doctora Sandra. And so she says, pues a lo que te truje, Chencha. And I'm like, oye, pues, ¿qué es eso? And she began to describe, and she says, pues mi mamá siempre me dice así. And so the way I remember it, how you taught me, Sandra, was that you said, it's a reminder que estamos en nuestro propio camino, que no nos desviemos, that we should not, falter from our path or look and compare or fear or, kind of wander off, but just come back to our center, come back to what we believe our center is, love, and what we are here to do and to serve. And I want to really highlight that I want those that are listening to know that sometimes you feel like, no, pues yo pa qué vine? Like, what is my purpose? What am I here for? I still don't know, and I'm figuring it out. And that's also part of the journey. And so I really want to highlight that. Que si a lo mejor no sabes, like, oh, I want to do this or I want to do that. It's all good. The journey, the path is the way. And I think that's really important. See.
I was going to say, and really at the essence, right? A lo que te truje Chencha is like a lo que viniste.
Yes.
And part of the process, I mean, obviously when it wasn't that deep, cuando mi mamá me decía, like, a lo que te truje Chencha, I was more like, get your shit done, right? Like,
yes.
Needs this. But it's really evolved into like, a qué viniste, what is your purpose?
Yes.
Right? And so we're going to get into it. We're going to get into manifestation. We're going to get into a lo que venimos,
yes.
Right? And just a reminder, like, this is a raw and divinely led podcast, which means you get to witness these conversations between me and La Doctora Dulce. And you get to bear witness to things that come up very naturally. We just have a title and we go with it, right? Like, so welcome for you all who haven't joined us before. You can listen to this on Apple, on Spotify, but you can also see our beautiful faces aquí. So,
and YouTube.
Yes. So I brought it up to you, but then you also looked up the term a lo que te truje Chencha and you found it online or something, right? So this isn't like just limited to my mom's dichos.
Right.
That we use collectively, right? That more people also have heard this in their lives. And one of the things that this has evolved into for me is how sin acción no hay manifestación. There is no manifestation without actions, right? And when I think about, like, I grew up in a really like religious household where we went to church like all the time, right? And the translation there is sin like hechos, sin fe, sin hechos, or something like that, right? Isn't gonna like be fruitful.
Right.
And so it's the same concept. And I think that we have this idea that like manifesting is like this just magical thing that poof just happens, right, without us doing anything, but that's really not the case.
Right. Y gracias for bringing that up, porque what comes up for me with this particular podcast that I want to highlight and bring up is I always talk about las tres M's, the three M's, and that's manifestación, milagros, and magia. So manifestation, miracles, and magic. And so when Sandra and I talked about a lo que te truje Chencha, it almost felt like when you open up, the way shows up, ¿no? Como nos dice el Rumi, we are open to receiving. Like, we don't chase anymore, right? And so what I realized and what I noticed is that the more I said yes to things, even though they scared me, even though they made me all sweaty in the pits, like the more I said yes, the more opportunities would show up and manifest. And then you would have these synchronistic moments of milagritos or miracles that would show up. And they were experiences that you cannot make up. Like I tell my friends, I'm like, I almost feel like I get spiritually punked. Like spirit is like, I got you.
Spirit has a sense of humor for sure.
For sure. Spirit has a sense of humor. And so different opportunities that we've had, I feel again, it's aligned because we are taking action, even if it's small action. To somebody else, it'll be like, it's not that serious. You got on Instagram. For me, it was everything. Like I was so scared. Yo no me quería meter en social media. I lived under a rock and I was cool under there. Pero me dijeron, well, how are people going to know what you're doing, Dulce, if you don't put yourself out there? And man, when I clicked like whatever to get on the little Instagram thing, me dio un miedo. Pero si no lo hubiera hecho, then I wouldn't have found Sandra. You know? And so those are things that we have to kind of push ourselves beyond our limits of comfort and say yes. And the opportunities will just start coming your way.
Yeah. And I think it's important to name that you were saying yes to things that are in alignment, things that are aligned with your purpose, right? And I always think about, so you were talking about how like the more I said yes, the more these opportunities would come, right? The more I'm attracting. And I'm attracting because I'm saying yes to aligned things that are aligned with my values and my purpose, but also you are creating space. And so I always think about I had a session with the psychologist, my therapist that I see. And she brought up how, she was trying to have a baby. And so she needed to create space. And sometimes that means creating physical space. Sometimes that means creating energetic space, emotional space, right? For the things that we love, for the things that we're aligned with. And so for her, it was like creating a physical space. Let me get this baby room together. Let me start adding furniture. Let me start being intentional about the things that I put in there to create space for this baby. And so when you think about it metaphorically, like what is your baby, right? I recently, well, I'm going to go back before I talk about this, but I started creating space for speaking engagements. I started cutting down on my clinical work. I started to put myself out there and say yes to also things that were aligned with the things that I love to talk about, right? And the opportunities started coming. And sometimes people are like, how do you market yourself for speaking? And I'm like, I don't.
That's right. That's right.
I market myself, but when I'm doing it, when I'm saying yes to opportunities that are in alignment, because what happens, you're going to have people in that group that are watching you, that are also resonating with what you're talking about.
Yes.
So recently I started creating physical space for something else that I love, something else that's been in my heart a lot, and that's my art. And so I started converting my home office into my mini art studio so that I have a creative space to work with. Para cuando me dan ganas to like paint, I can just pop up in there and start painting. Porque me da hueva, I like to unpack everything. And like by the time I'm done unpacking, ya ni ganas tengo. Like it's like, I don't even want to do this no more. Sometimes it's about creating physical space. Sometimes it's creating energetic space, emotional space.
Yes, that's so important. And I think I really appreciate you bringing up the creative space. Porque de allí es donde sale la magia. And I feel that in this life that we live, in this nonstop world and society, de la chinga, the grind culture, the hustle y todo ese rollo, we don't allow ourselves to slow down and to allow for creativity to flow through us. And I really feel that creativity we all have, because some people are like, no, pero yo no sé dibujar, yo no sé colorear, yo no sé collage. And I remind people, your life is a creation, right? And so how are you making space to be intentional about lo que quieres vivir? And not just the things, because don't get me wrong, girl, I love me some money. Like I'm trying to be like, bring it, de donde caiga. But more so, I want to bring in and align the feeling of ease, the feeling of being able to share out my dreams to the community for free, pero que alguien me pague. Like, don't get it twisted. So, eso es algo que me estoy diciendo mucho ahorita. I create mantras for myself. Y una es de que I'm waiting for somebody to funnel money into me so that I can offer my services to the community for free. So even in those ways, when you create a mantra or you find an affirmation, that's a way of creation. And that's a way of opening up space energetically to say, estoy lista. Aquí tengo, my hands are open. Bring it.
Yes. And one of the things that is coming up for me when I'm listening to you is co-creation. And we think of that we're just creating things on our own, but when we're walking in purpose, when we're walking in alignment, we are co-creating with source, with the universe, with God, with whatever your higher power is. Like we're co-creating with ancestors, right? We're like working towards this collective thing. And I think that's the difference between like a decolonial approach to freaking surviving in capitalism, right?
Yes.
Is finding purpose, but also knowing that we're co-creating with spirit when we're walking in purpose. We are being divinely guided to do the work that we're doing. And one of my mantras is the universe is conspiring for my highest good. Right? And like I say that to myself often, and I have to remind myself, especially when things aren't necessarily going the way that I planned on creating them, is knowing that I'm still co-creating and that the universe has my back, that things are working in my best interests.
I love that. Thank you so much, because when we were getting ready to do this podcast, le mandé un texto a la Sandra, and I was like, girl, we got to do this one. A lo que te truje Chencha, de buenas o de malas, a pataleando, like, let's show up, right? Because we're busy. We have so much going on, but we want to create space for this podcast because it is about weaving this new way of living. And so that's our mission and why we're making space for this podcast, making space and time to sit here with you all so we can have a conversation. And always my hope is to give you tools, to give you gifts, to give you ways of saying, okay, you know what? I've never tried that. I'm a little scared, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And then seeing how things, the ripple effect, no? How the things that you start saying yes to will then open up other doors.
Yes. I love that. I love the ripple effects concept because it's not, it just doesn't stop in one place. Like there's things that are going to continue to happen, right? Like a domino effect with the things that we're doing. But yeah, the time, you know, like I said, we have full lives and sometimes things get away from us, but this was so much in alignment too. It's like, pues a lo que nos truje Chencha, right? Because like, this is what we want to do. If we want to put ourselves out there, then we have to create space. And sometimes whether it's doing a podcast or showing up for other things, it can be really easy to be like, it's just not today. I'm not feeling like it. No me peiné, like, right? Like I told Dulce right before this, like, mocha una manita de gato, because like I was literally woke up and I was just doing supervision before this. But we have to it's about showing up and being willing, right? I did that webinar with Dr. Tama, and I was thinking like, man, like I can't miss this, right? Like this is an opportunity that I can't miss it, but I was hella sick, right? And I'm like, should I show up? Should I cancel? Should I ask her to reschedule? But I'm like, how many opportunities am I turning away by not showing up? So pinche medicina de volada, right? I'm going to show up. But we show up. And today even, right? Like we don't prep a lot for these conversations that we have, but it's also about creating that space to be here, right? Showing up. And my intention is to show up here authentically, show up in ways that I don't even show up on social media sometimes, right? And so being able to just be like, pues, si no me peiné, pues no me peiné, like así me van a ver, or whatever the case is.
Yes. And I think in our first episode, you said, this is a place where we're going to unmask and really show who we are. Porque I feel like in a lot of the spaces that we're in, we have to navigate and, ay, pues, ¿qué me puedo poner? ¿Qué puedo decir? Am I being too loud? Am I being too much? Like, how do we navigate these professional spaces? But we're trying to infiltrate and be like, look, this is me and this is how I'm gonna roll. Y así hablo. Y así me voy a poner mi ropa. I remember I was working at a school. I was a school psychologist, and I was showing up in Vans, you know, and in my kicks, and I was like, "What's up, baggy pants?" And I remember they approached me. One woman approached me. She says, "Aren't you a doctor? Like, don't you have a doctorate?" And I said, "Yes,
Mhm.
but why are you wearing those shoes? And why are your pants? You know, sé qué?" And I said, "I'm a doctor and I'm a rock my Vans." You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm gonna be quien soy. Y si les caigo bien, cool. Y si no, pues ahí se ven.
Right. For real. And I talked about this in one of my TikToks, and y'all see my hair today. Like I had a my kid's birthday party the other day, and so like I did my hair like this too the other day because it was hot as hell. And this little girl shows up, and we have the same hairdo, right? And I was like, I was like, hey, we're like our hair is the same. And so it reminds me though, when I was doing my internship, my pre-doc internship, I had wore my hair half up, and I talk about this in one of my TikToks, and my supervisor was like, "Do you have a daughter?" And I'm like, "No, why?" And like, "Oh, I just thought you did your hair the same way, pinche vieja," right? Like,
Oh
and
my
I'm
gosh.
like, how condescending. Like, obviously back then it was like, what, right? Like,
Yeah,
but ahora I'm like, how condescending, right? How rigid in your mind that I should only be wearing my hair straight down, right? To be
right.
professional. And
Yes.
so that's what I mean. Like, I'm going to show up here in ways that I don't even show up in some spaces.
Mhm.
And I think it's important for us to be completely unmasked eventually in all spaces,
That's
right?
right.
And so that's the goal. It's just to be exactly who the fuck you are and wait for people, your people, to find you.
Yes. Oh my God. Y eso tiene todo que ver with this pláticas, a lo que te truje chencha. So the more we show up as authentically ourselves, the more we show up in our garras, lo que caiga, like what we feel comfortable in, the more that other people that are similar to us are going to be like, oh my gosh, she's my people. Like before you even have a conversation, it's like a magnet. You find each other across the room and you just feel that feeling. And I think that's where the magia is, right? It's that you are then saying, this is me. You're unmasking and you're saying, así soy, y si te gusta a ti, maybe you don't allow yourself to be like that. And so that's the regalito, is like the more que yo puedo ser yo, entonces tú puedes ser tú. Like we're going to show up together and we're going to lift each other up. And that's what it's about. And that's why I think the title of our podcast, the Las Weavers, it's about we're weaving this new tapestry of living. And it might sound pretty big and like, okay, you're all creating a new world. Yeah, we really are.
Yes, and a new perspective. And so, and it's exactly what I was thinking, what you were saying is we're giving permission for people to also show up as
Yes.
their authentic selves, right? And I'm laughing because I saw this hairstyle on like Linda Garcia, who does the Wealth Warrior book, right?
Oh,
She did
yes.
a live and she was wearing her hair in like colitas, and I love hairstyles, right? Like I love like doing different stuff with my hair.
Sí.
And she gave me permission to show up like this, right? And so we're showing up as authentic as possible, but then you're like, oh, you're cute and you're also doing the damn thing. You're also
Oh,
a boss. You're also a bad bitch. You're also this. And I can show up with my pinches colitas si quiero también, right? Like,
yes.
so yes, we give permission to other people to show up as themselves. And the more we show up unmasked, the more we show up as authentic as possible, the more we align with our purpose.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And like you were saying, you can be in a room. The intention is voy a hacer esta plática o voy a conectarme con esta persona, or I'm just gonna connect in this way. And you have no idea how the world, the universe, como dijiste, is conspiring for us. And so you're just showing up, you're doing your thing, you're just being who you are. And then you're going to draw that person that's going to give you the thing that you're ready to say yes to, que ni te la crees, that you're just like, man, this person took me to lunch. You know how people are like, hey, girl, we should kick it. Let's do lunch. Y luego nunca te llaman. So I say, that person done took me to lunch. No me van a llamar. But they do call you. And it just, again, it opens up. And And so it's in reflection, it's in looking back that we can connect the dots. El por qué this didn't open up for me that I really wanted. Like I was like, I want this path. I'm ready. I got it. And life is like, no, chiquitita, I got something better for you. Cálmese, right? And then life is like, bam, let me drop you where I need you to be, where I need you to show up. And so it makes me think about this podcast. Like it was just a conversation we had casually one day, like, hey, como que we're kind of funny. We should do a little something, right? Y se dieron las cosas y the timing of it all. So again, the milagritos and the magia show up, and then you just have to say yes.
Mm-hmm. And earlier you talked about how sometimes, and you talk about this often, right? Like how, aunque te dé miedo, right? Like you're going to jump. But, and so that's what it's about too. But I feel in my experience that the times that I am both scared and excited is an indication that I'm in the right path. It's
Totally.
always an indication that I'm moving towards my purpose, because change is uncomfortable. Growth is painful, right? And so, si no te da miedo, if that shit doesn't scare the shit out of you, then is it worthwhile?
Oof. Why do you think I'm obsessed with the metamorphosis, girl? La metamorphosis is my jam because of that painful transformation of death and rebirth. And it's like, you know, I have a friend that was like, Dulce, but do all mariposas have to go through the metamorphosis? I'm like, yeah, dude, like you can't just be like a caterpillar forever or a mariposa, you know, just, yeah, you can't bypass. And so you have to go through those dark, painful experiences and moments, but we don't know how we're being worked in those times. So if somebody that's listening right now is going through a really hard time and you just feel like, ¿cómo le voy a hacer? How am I going to get through this? Like, trust that there's a reason and a purpose for this breaking. I like to say breaking open, because sometimes nos duele tanto el corazón, like you feel it in your heart, like you're breaking, but it's to open us up to what's next.
It's for growth, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's important to also name the, like, words are so important to me, right? So we talk about like dark times, but I think dark and like shadow work is imperative. It's so important. And we don't need to demonize, you know, I think about like darkness and like brightness and whiteness and all that, right? Like, and so when I say like dark times or shadow healing, I am by no means like saying that is in a negative way. Like, I think that shadow work is imperative for growth, right? It's like, it's so important. It's that breaking through that is important. And you talked about that rebirth and the life. Right before we had a conversation about how it also gets us to not take for granted the time, right, that we have. It makes us not take for granted life, because if we're keeping things like death, right, obviously rebirth in a spiritual sense, but in the physical sense, when we're thinking about death and time and space, right, as we know it in this dimension or whatnot, we are talking about limited time, right? And one of the things that really hit different for me is a meme or a story that somebody shared. One of my colleagues, Dr. Mario Fina, had shared on her page, and it said, the longer you wait to start to live the life that you want, the shorter amount of time you have to live in it.
Ooh,
that hit so different for me, because I'm like, I look at the Truje Chencha, like, what the fuck?
Right.
Like, no podemos estar esperando, because if we have goals for the type of life that we want, right? Whether it's a life and purpose, this energetic life, this peaceful life, this money life, whatever it is, the more I wait to get started, the more I wait to take action, the less amount of time I'm going to have to live in that space.
Oh, I love that. It makes me think, like, when I think about people retiring, you know, people are like, no, ya me quiero retirar. I have this many more years, and I'm going to invest this much time in my jale and blah, blah, blah. And I truly believe, Sandra, I'm like, you know what? I never want to retire from this work. This is my dream. This is my passion. Like, I want to be a little ruquita, like all viejita, arrugadita, like Hácenle, vamos a hacer una plática. Like, you know, just really
Aquí en el pinche podcast.
aquí en el pinche podcast, we're gonna be all ruquita. We're gonna grow here, you know, and because this is like breathing. This is like breathing. It's what I love. It doesn't feel like work. It's aligned, and so I encourage people to go inward. To yes, go into that shadow work. Go into the parts of us that we don't like to face because it's scary, but that's where you will find the treasure, right? That's where you will find the light when you continue to break open.
Mm-hmm. And knowing that stepping into your fear is stepping into your power. You don't know what's on the other side. You don't know what other opportunities there are for you. You don't know what doors you're opening when you are stepping into your fear. And so, aviéntate, like you say.
Yes, déjate caer, como dicen. And as you said that, it made me think about the first time we talked about your Cancun conference. And how you were like, oof, this is the most scariest, biggest dream I have. Y ya te vas a aventar the second annual conference in Jamaica. And so I want to bring it up again. I think I'm going to do it every podcast. Is that bad? Because I'm so excited about what you offer, Sandra, the people that you bring together to these international, powerful places where it's an all-inclusive event. And so I just really quickly, if you could just share it, I'm gonna share it out almost every time porque abre tantas puertas esa conferencia in so many ways.
Yeah.
In so many ways.
Yeah, there's so much networking that happens, so many different connections that are made, and I'm still scared. I'm scared about the second one, right? Like I'm over here like la tercera, like what am I gonna do, right? Like it's a scary process. But yeah, like I see myself, and I'll get to the conference in a second, but I see myself as, when I think about myself as a weaver, I really think about myself as connecting people too.
You too.
And I am a connector. I feel like I draw people to people. And that's one of my
gifts.
Yeah, that's one of my gifts. And I'm weaving this conference too, and being very intentional about the people that I chose to bring. And I brought this up before with you, but like it's still an ongoing like spiritual process, right? Like my spiritual hygiene is imperative for this to happen, for it to happen the way it's supposed to happen. And even last night, I'm sitting there praying at my altar, and I'm like, praying for the spiritual teacher, the healer, right? That's going to be there because I haven't announced it and I'm waiting to confirm. But it's exciting. I think when I talk to people, one of the best parts of the conference is bringing in that ancestral healing, bringing in those indigenous practices, and not leaving out the historical remembrance, but at the same time incorporating the knowledge that we do have, those BIPOC researchers that are bringing new decolonized practices into the therapeutic space, normalizing talk about other spiritual practices like, tarot and voodoo and curanderismo and shamanism, and this year Rastafari culture. So it's an exciting event. It's exciting to be in community with people because it's a very validating and healing space. And that's the goal, right? Like that was always the goal. So I'm excited for it.
Thank you.
February 2024, y'all. So you still have time to make payments, you do all that.
Yes. So, we're getting close to our time to wrap up, but for me, it's really important again that every plática that we offer you all, that we do together, that you walk away with regalitos, that you walk away with actionable tools, porque aquí no nomás es el witty witty. Aquí hay regalos que vamos a dar. We're going to give gifts, and then it's up to you to say, you know what, I'm going to open that one even though I'm scared, y me voy a aventar. So some of the things that I feel that came out from our plática today is say yes, aunque te dé miedito. Put yourself out there in the most authentic and genuine way that is you, not how others do or how others show up, but who is the truest of who you are.
Mhm.
What came up for you, Sandra?
How can I create space for the things that I love? How can I create space for the things that are aligned with my purpose? And also, how can I start to reframe my fear into this fuel that is going to motivate me to step into so that I can open up more opportunities? And remembering that I'm co creating with spirit, with source, with God, with my ancestors. I'm co creating, right? And so
All the
trusting,
time.
right? Trusting that the universe is conspiring for us and taking steps, because without action, there is no manifestation.
Yes. So in the foundation of all these things that we just shared, again, it's manifestation, miracles, and magic. And so the more you do these actionable steps, these regalitos that we shared, the more that you're gonna see those synchronistic moments que te vas a quedar de a seis. Like, did that really just happen? Like, so that's something that we want to leave you all with, and we want to say thank you for joining us again, and invite your community, let them know about us, share it out. That's how we get support. That's the reciprocity in this offering that we're sharing through Las Weavers, is share it out with your community, let them know to find us online. Sandra is at
Dr. Dr. period Sandra Leon Villa on Instagram. Same thing on TikTok without the period.
and I am at Doctora Corazon. So that's DRACRZN on Instagram. And then again, if you can share out this podcast with your people. And we are committing to doing one a month. Y aquí la mera mera dijo que le íbamos a hacer, we're going to drop it the 22nd of every month. So we are creating space for this creative venture and this regalo that we are so joyously offering through Las Weavers for all of you.
Yes. So every 22nd, expect a drop of a new episode, and we'll see you next month.
Gracias.